All right, folks, we're going dancing. And I put a tweet out there that, man, the majority of my lifetime, Auburn has been sitting at home in March. And I've had to, like, as a neutral, put together my brackets. No one outside of Auburn, no one's caring about what Auburn was doing. We were so excited in 2009, I believe, to make the NIT and maybe go to the Final Four of the NIT. Now we're just kind of like, man, yeah, we're almost expecting the March Madness now, but it's still so exciting. We're here. I wanted to start out the pod by talking about Redmont Vodka's Final Four bracket, where you play against Charles Barkley. That's what we're going to do as a pod, and hopefully get you guys out here. And I think our big plan is you guys sign up on the Barkley Final Four Redmont situation on their website. I got my drink here. You guys sign up, put as your username the jungle, like hyphen dash whatever, and your actual name as your username, and we'll keep a watch out on that in our podcast. And whoever wins from our podcast that puts the jungle before their name can come on the podcast either for our year-end wrap or just in general next year whenever it fits for you guys. So whoever wins, I mean, if you guys win, unless it's somebody from our pod, you're a better expert than us. So you can come on and talk about it with us for an episode. And I think they're doing
Well,
a cool
so
thing. They're doing a
we'll
cool
make you
thing
a
where
custom graphic for social media.
there you go. Ben's our socials guy, and he makes some cool graphics. And I think the thing they're doing with Redmont too is if you win, if you get a perfect bracket, Charles Barkley will pay you $1 million, which is pretty cool. Which will be, I mean, it's astronomical odds that happens. But hey, man, sign up, get $1 million from Charles Barkley if you figured it out. And then two, if you get a better bracket than Charles Barkley, they send you a bumper sticker. I believe it says "I beat Charles Barkley." That's going to look great on a laptop or a water bottle, whatever. So it's just a lot of fun. It's free. Get on there again. Put the jungle dash your name under username, and we'll keep track of it on the pod. Matt, Ben, we made the tournament. Matt, you want to give us like a kind of rundown of what everybody needs to know about making the tournament?
Yeah, so we're a 9 seed, which is, I think, higher than most of us thought. I know there was a chance. There's some weird projections. 9 seed playing in Birmingham on the same day that Alabama's playing in Birmingham. So we're going to talk a lot about that. Like, that's a huge deal for Birmingham, just as a city, to have that work out that way. Playing Iowa, we'll get into them a little bit later in the podcast. We're in the 8-9 game and potentially playing Houston, number 1 seed, in the round of 32. So, and we're playing at 6:50 Eastern, 6:50 on Thursday night on TNT. So there's all your logistics details.
Ben, you excited?
I'm very excited. Iowa is a great matchup for us. They kind of finished the year on a little bit of a skid, just like we did. They were one and done in their conference tournament. I believe they finished 5th overall in the Big Ten. They pulled some upsets off this year, but as we get into the breakdown a little bit later, we can talk about how we match up with them.
Let's get in a little bit. We almost talked about in the pod if we wanted to talk about this Arkansas game at all. We have to touch on it a bit. We're going to try to keep it short. I didn't get to watch the Arkansas SEC tournament game. I know after that Tennessee game and the close Alabama game, we really were hoping we could kind of turn a corner, maybe get a game or two in the SEC tournament and come into the NCAA tournament hot. Didn't work out. We lost close. Matt was there in person. You want to kind of go over a couple little things there that you saw?
Yeah, tough draw. I mean, Arkansas is probably the best 10 seed I've ever seen in the SEC tournament. They're an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament. They were 10 in the way they finished the SEC season. I think seeing them in person, just, man, their length is just so pronounced. Granted, it's against our small guards, but you just see that NBA talent and length. Arkansas is pretty good. I think they're very dangerous. They're in line to play Kansas, a 1 seed in the second round, potentially. I think that could be a great game. Tough game for Auburn. It's a tough matchup. Nick Smith Jr. was back for Arkansas. He's the one who ultimately hit the game-winning basket. But ultimately, it was just tale as old as time for this team. They had some lax moments. They fell behind by too much, according to the Matt system. And then they rallied back, actually to take a lead in the last minute briefly, only to give it up and then make a really horrible decision. And that ultimately kind of cost them the game. So tough loss, close loss. To
Another one.
team. Another one. And that is the story of the season. And now you're going to be playing an Iowa team that most likely is going to, I assume this will be another close game. And can Auburn find a way? And they haven't very often this year. So I think the biggest thing was the length of Arkansas. And then from being in person, Wendell Green's decision, for better or for worse, on after Nick Smith Jr. hit that jumper, to just push the ball like crazy with 15 or 20 seconds left, down 1 in the double bonus. It's just in my mind, a very questionable decision. because even if he gets fouled, even if he makes a shot, you're up 1 and Arkansas is coming back down with 15 seconds to go and they're in the bonus too. So I thought we could have hunted a better shot with that time. And honestly, being there live, he was down the floor in like 2 or 3 seconds. Like it was so fast. And I know people could say, well, Bruce should have called a timeout, but I mean, it just happened. I was shocked that it happened that way. I don't know what Ben's thoughts were watching. So those were the big things that kind of stood out. And Jalen Williams was absent and not there, and we got killed on the glass. Those are my observations.
Yeah, and we saw Bruce call the timeout that he needed to towards the end of the game. KD Johnson was playing his typical hero ball. Somehow this guy needs us to be down double digits to show up. But every time we're getting our tails kicked, he is the spark plug that seems to get us back in the game. Defense, offense, he was doing it all for us. We had to look late to try to hit a three-pointer to tie it up, and Bruce let KD bring it straight down the floor and mess around for about 7 or 8 seconds before he realized we didn't have a shot there. Once again, we saw the genius of Bruce and this coaching staff. They drew up a fantastic play to get us a decent look at the end of the game. We just don't have that guy, and we saw that the difference with that Arkansas team. They have a guy. They have a guy that's going to be a lottery pick, like we had a Jabari Smith last year. And the recipe for this team to win is not to be in these close matchups. We seem to be lacking that clutch gene offensively overall. And yeah, we just got absolutely brutalized on the glass, and Jalen Williams is a non-factor, and we lose basketball games when he does not play.
Mm-hmm. Well, part of my discussion on some of these older games, I'll be curious if you guys confirm or deny this. It's starting to feel like after you lose this many close games, it can no longer be hey, we stayed in it, we just got unlucky and just didn't pull it off. At some point, it's, it gets from a trend to a coincidence to a trend to maybe that's just who we are. We don't have that go-to guy to go get it. I mean, thoughts, guys, on is this just how it is, Ben? I think you're alluding to we just can't get in close games. Clearly, that's not a strength.
Well, it's more than not a strength. It's a style thing. Where this team excels is doing the things that it does well consistently over the course of an entire game. We saw that in the first matchup with Arkansas. We saw that on the road against South Carolina and in the initial matchup against Ole Miss. And we really saw that against Missouri. This is an inside-out basketball team that needs to score inside early and often and needs to build a lead that it protects. Coming from being down is a lot harder when we lack the depth that we thought we might have had at the beginning of the year. If we were a team that could go 10 guys deep consistently and not just hope that our bench holds serve when they're out there on the floor, it's probably a bit of a different conversation. But we've gotten a chance to look at the plus minus over the whole year. And for all of the amazing plays that we've seen from Trey Donaldson, he has our worst plus minus because when he's on the floor, he's typically out there with most of the backup guys. So that just goes to show you that when our starters are not in, we are consistently losing ground, and that makes it hard to win games if they don't turn that rotation over up enough points.
I still think, I agree with you. I still think a big piece of we've lost early in the year. We talked about how our depth should be our strength, right? And that really shrunk away. But you see, how does Auburn come back from down 15 or down 17 to West Virginia or down 15 to Arkansas? It took KD Johnson playing the best half of basketball he's played all year. And that was we've talked about how offense for this team is finding gold. When you get easy baskets in transition or when KD goes for 20 plus. I mean, that's what we need if we're going to put ourselves in those holes to even come back. So I do give them credit. I know, and I probably disagree with you guys a little bit because we came back from down 15, took the lead, and we defended their last possession as well as we possibly could. And the guy hits a tough shot. To Ben's point, they've got 4 draft picks on the floor at any given time for the most part. And one of their guys made a play. But Jalen came off the bench at a minute and a half, hit a bucket. Flanagan hit the best shot I think I've ever seen him hit to give us the lead with less than a minute to go. Super clutch. So I just think the last minutes come down to all these little things. And it's our fault for allowing so many of our games to be in that position. Tennessee struggled with the same thing. And if you look at Auburn last year and Alabama this year, the thing that great teams do is you're going to lose some of those close games when you're in them, regardless of what you do. But Alabama's been blowing people out. And Tennessee at times has blown people out. Last year, we blew a lot of people out. And we were up 10 or 20 where you're not vulnerable to a bad call, a missed shot, a lucky play, any of that stuff.
I'd be curious to see our luck metrics. I know we've joked about the luck metric, but we've seen years where our luck metrics really high and we win a lot of close games. And then it feels like this year our luck metrics has got to be one of the worst ones out there. You would think we would just luck into some of these close wins at some point, But I said we'd keep it short on the Arkansas game. We don't have to dwell on that one when we have exciting March Madness, the dance to go to. I was looking over here at Auburn's NCAA tournament appearances in history because I said the majority of my life they haven't been in it. And that's so true. Before Bruce Pearl got to Auburn, in my lifetime, we'd only made it 3 times, 1999, 2000, 2003. That in my entire lifetime before Bruce, that was 20 plus years. I only got to see them play 3 times. Some of them are pretty young there. But man, since he's gotten here, we've got 2018, 2019, right, to 2022 and 2023. And man, I guess they don't count 2020. They should count 2020, man. I know it didn't happen, but that was another thing I was going to bring up.
There's no doubt
too.
We were getting a bid.
Yeah, so I'm going to count 5 there. We didn't get to watch it, but we would have made it. And I was going to bring that up too. That man, 3 years ago, about this day was when March Madness got canceled. The NBA got suspended and all that. So man, enjoy the fact that we're watching basketball out here. I know there's been some frustrating games, but man, we're going to get together. A lot of you in person in Birmingham or to get together with your friends and family and go to this game. And man, it's just cool to be here.
Yeah, Jackson, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe March 12th was the day New York City shut down, right?
For me, March 11th is my day when the NBA suspended. That was the day I was like, oh, it's going down. So I was looking at that today and man, and then they canceled March Madness, man. It was.
I think the night before was when somebody on the Timberwolves had tested positive, and the referees came out to midcourt and they said, "No, we're done."
Rudy Gobert.
Gobert.
I watched it literally today because I wanted to put it on my Instagram and be like, just remember where we could be. And today we're talking about basketball and the idea that March Madness could ever have gotten canceled. We don't have to get super far into that right now, but man, it's just cool to be here. I don't know if you guys have some stats or anything. I know there's been a lot thrown around on Twitter and things that are like, how cool is it that we've made this many times with Bruce? Or I think I saw a great stat about our at a conference schedule, how many teams made the tournament. Is there any stats you guys have seen out there that seem to like blow you away?
I wanted to echo right after the Tennessee game, Bruce and Marlene, I'm sure, and everybody on that staff, they were all in lockstep saying we've made 5 out of 6. And I think that was intentional. And it does count the COVID year because that team would have been a 5, 6 seed, whatever. So
you got somebody on this Wikipedia, man. Whoever's the Wikipedia editor, get this done. I know that's like a thing you could do. Anyone could do. I don't know how to do it. If you're listening to this podcast, go edit the thing and put 2020 in there.
5 out of 6 is huge. We've talked about how rare 4 in a row is in college basketball. This is number 2 in a row. And then I think Ben sent us this, we set a program record, I believe, of games against tournament teams. With 13 of our games this year were against tournament opponents. And then 6 of those were out in that non-conference schedule that a lot of us weren't that we didn't enjoy it as much as we could have. But that's good scheduling. And that's why our metrics held us together when our record was falling apart. So I think the staff and Burgomaster and all those guys deserve a ton of credit.
Can you name them, Matt? Can we get you to name all 6 of our outer conference that made? Don't look. It's trivia time.
I can't look at my bracket.
No, can't look at the bracket. Don't look at the bracket.
Memphis, West Virginia, USC, Northwestern. The small ones. Who are the small ones? Ben, you got the other 2?
No, Ben can steal. Ben can steal if you can't.
All right, I'm going to steal this because we Texas Southern and Colgate, and we were within 1 game. Bradley was within 1 game if they had just won their conference championship. But you want to talk about a March Madness? We got a preview of that in the conference tournaments. I think the first week of conference tournaments, something like 4 or 5 overall 1 seeds in these mid majors lost.
Yep.
And then that's it. They're out.
Let me tell you something about Colgate. This is another weird tangent, but every couple of years or a couple of times now, I've gone to all the different alumni bars in New York City. Like, it's not a college town, but man, there's alums from everywhere. So it's really fun. I made a whole list. Me and my friend Ryan went out to all the different bars. We bopped all around for 2 days in a row in cool jerseys, whatever. And consistently, 2 different times we went. 1, Auburn, New York City bar is by far one of the best ones out there. But 2, Colgate. Colgate is not that far from New York City, and twice they have had amazing parties during the games. Last year against Wisconsin, 2 or 3 years ago against Tennessee. They lost both times, but man, shout out to Colgate. They will always forever be in my mind as like a great party school during March Madness. So if you want like a little funny team to cheer for, that's a fun one.
Here's another stat for you. Quietly the SEC got the most teams in, tied with the Big Ten in the tournament. So 8 teams in. Vanderbilt got left out, and they were as hot as anybody. They came up just short. Last year, the SEC was a dud in the NCAA tournament. Fortunately for us, everybody lost pretty much except for Arkansas in the first weekend. So really curious to see how the SEC, set of teams does this year.
I'm hoping
So let's
we're a
talk about our
dud.
potential road.
I'm hoping we're a dud overall, except for the 9 seeds. Just 9 seeds from the SEC. You can do good. Everyone else be a dud. But yeah, go ahead with the road here. I see we got Iowa coming up first.
Yeah. Iowa's first. We'll get into Iowa a little bit more of a breakdown, but our number 1 overall seed in our bracket is Houston. We don't want to call them a paper tiger, but they did need a last-second basket to beat Memphis, who is a team that Auburn has played, and they did lose at home to Alabama pretty handily, if I recall. I think it was almost double digits.
They lost to Memphis today, too, by double digits.
Oh, they did lose the conference championship. Wow, okay. Let's see here.
Yeah, I guess if you're looking at number 1 seeds too, I'm interested to see, like, it would be the second game we play. As an Auburn fan base, we are not used to this being the 8 or 9 seed. I mean, we've only made the tournament a couple times so far, but it's all been as 5 seed, I believe, so far. So we've had this great time where we could play a decent but less good than us opponent, and then the next game is like a 50-50 game. This is the first time we've played a 50-50 game, and then what feels like almost an impossibility. It happens every year. People pull this off. It just really sucks to like for us to what feels like a good year in the tournament is to make that Sweet 16 and make that second weekend. That seems to be kind of what people baseline are like. If you can do that, you're good. Anything from there is really like extra gravy. But now you have to go against number 1 seed, and that's what you get for not playing so well during the year. But I'm looking down number 1 seeds, Alabama. Of course, they wouldn't put us with them. Glad we don't have to play them. And then we got Purdue. Really glad we don't have to play Purdue. They have this really tall lineup. They've always had these amazingly tall lineups at Purdue. They like have these 7-footers constantly. Glad we don't have to play them because I think we've had trouble against tall guys. The other one's Kansas, another P5 big time major team. I have no idea how great they really are this year, but in general, I think it's better to play
real deal.
The G5 smaller mid-major. It doesn't play as much SEC opponents every time or power conference opponents. I know it's different in basketball, but I think overall we'll be the first power conference opponent they've played in months. So it's really, I don't know who they beat at a conference. I'm going to look it up, but I just think of the 4 1 seeds, I think Houston's probably the best one to get.
Absolutely. I agree.
And overall, we have some friends and neighbors in our bracket. Texas A&M is our 7 seed. They're going to play 10 seed Penn State in the opening round, and Mississippi State is part of the last 4 in group, so they're in a play-in against Pittsburgh to match up with Iowa State, the 6th seed in our bracket. We have the potential for a little bit of bad blood in our bracket. Texas, a really hot Texas team that has now beaten Kansas twice to end the year, is our 2 seed, and their second game matchup could be against Texas A&M if Texas A&M can beat Penn State.
God, I love March Madness. It's so much fun. There's always so much fun games to watch.
Well, and how about this?
How
about this?
Go ahead.
Real quick. What if Auburn does somehow, they beat Iowa, and then the Birmingham crowd, although it'll be mostly probably half and half Alabama fans cheering for Houston in that Saturday game if both teams advance. But if Auburn beats Houston, they could play Miami in a little rematch of last year's game, or Indiana, which would be like an incredible thing for Auburn basketball to play Indiana in the Sweet 16. Obviously, that's like asking a lot. I love this bracket. I think we got an incredibly generous draw, not only in location, but in seed and in the path. I mean, there's good teams in this region, but as a 9 seed, we don't have any big wins, and this is our opportunity. And Iowa, we'll get into it, but they are talented. They're in a tough league, maybe a little tougher than the SEC. But I think we have a shot. I think we have a shot in this first round, and then you just see what happens against Houston.
And I'm looking at this Houston schedule. I still have pulled up for I pull up Iowa's. Their big wins at a conference against Oregon. They beat Oregon. They beat number 13 Virginia, and they beat a ranked St. Mary's. They lost to Alabama 71-65. Other than that, it's G5 stuff. It's mid-major stuff. So, those are the big ones. So they have beat some bigger teams. That Virginia honestly plays the way we're kind of playing right now, so that's not great that they beat them. But hey, they're gonna win some games. It's been a while since they played a major team. So,
well, how about their last?
It's also
2?
interesting. Yeah, look at their last 2.
Yeah, I was gonna say just like their last 2 are against 2 of the few Big Ten teams that didn't make the tournament. They lost to Nebraska and they lost to Ohio State, one and done, like Ben said. Iowa's a team that historically under Fran McCaffrey is going to put some pressure on you on offense. They're going to have some shooters. They're going to probably test our 3-point defense. But defensively, they can be had sometimes. And I think they've struggled with inconsistency on that side. And, it's a fun, I think it's going to be a really fun game, honestly. I'm really excited about it.
And Iowa's also got a lot to play for, because as Iowa's looking at this draw, they're in love with it too. They beat this Iowa State team when they were ranked.
Mm-hmm.
And when Indiana was ranked, they've actually beaten them twice, as well as their familiarity with the Penn State matchup. So if I'm Iowa, I'm also looking at this saying that, you've got a real chance here.
Right. I think, it's going to be if you're talking about college basketball, for me is so much about coaches, right? Like these personalities. Yeah. Bruce Pearl, Fran McCaffrey is going to be like, man, there's going to be some emotions going on the sidelines. There's going to be a lot of yelling at refs. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I really am happy with this draw, guys. Like, I just think for the season we've had to end up, and I probably won't be there in Birmingham, but I know there's going to be so many people who maybe didn't get to go to that Final Four run, any of those games because they were so far away. There's going to be a lot of people who get to experience March Madness for the first time as an Auburn fan in person. And I think that's really cool. And I think Birmingham scored with this, getting both of them. I think it's pretty big for the city.
You want to talk about the ticket? You want to talk about the ticket prices,
yeah.
Matt, you saw?
Oh, yeah. Tickets. So Auburn's session is more expensive than Alabama's session. So if we ever needed some proof that, now granted it's at night, I know Alabama people will say they're all working, which I'm sure is true. But last I saw cheapest ticket to get in for the Thursday night 2-game session, which would be Houston's game and our game, $160 last time I checked. So not cheap.
And let's remember too, we're back in one of those wonderful situations to be in as an Auburn fan. Across all of our sports, you're going to be familiar with this. We're an underdog. We're pretty much an underdog from here on out. I think it will take 3 upsets in a row before we face a team that has a lower seed than us. Unless, at least 2, if Drake can upset Miami. Mm-hmm. But the odds of that are very much in our favor to only be playing higher seeds from here on out. It's not been a great year. It's been a great year by Auburn standards, but by the standards that I think Bruce wants to hold this program to, he would say this year was a little bit of a disappointing year. But we are now the David to everyone else's Goliath, and I think this is a role that we really thrive in. Every win from here on out is an upset.
I see on there. I'm just, we're learning on the fly over here also. I think Matt and them maybe have done a little more research, but I saw Iowa lost to Northwestern the last time they played, which was interesting. That's a common opponent we played against each other. And then also I saw that one of their games against Northwestern got postponed. I didn't know that any games this year got postponed because of COVID. We were talking about that a second ago. They had a game postponed this year because of COVID. I didn't know that was even a possibility this year. So another funny little tidbit. I'm trying to find some of their stats here.
Hey, I want to talk about some of their players.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's talk about Chris Murray first, because he's in a game where we just had our 6'8" power forward completely disappear. We're never going to need Jalen Williams' aggressive defense and fantastic body placement on offense more than we will against this matchup. Chris Murray is their leading scorer. He's also their leading rebounder. 6'8", 220-pound junior forward from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So a hometown kid. Wears number 24 for the Hawkeyes. But he plays nearly 35 minutes a game.
Yep.
Which means we have the chance to throw some bodies at him with Chris Moore and with Jalen both playing aggressively, hopefully, like we want them to.
This is a Jalen Williams game. I'm glad you said that. I mean, we've talked about him all year and how important he is to this team. And it's not always scoring. Sometimes it's 7 assists, 0 turnovers from a power forward spot. Sometimes it's the defense. That's going to be his primary responsibility, if I had to guess. Maybe you see some Alan Flanagan on him. His brother, Keegan Murray, was like a high lottery pick last year, you might remember, for Iowa. He's playing with the Sacramento Kings, I believe. And he is their best scoring option. And then after that, I would say people need to be aware of 2 coaches' kids, Patrick McCaffrey and Connor McCaffrey, more outside shooters. One's a forward, one's a guard. Iowa is not typically. I will be honest. I've not watched a ton of Iowa basketball this year, but just over the years, they're not afraid of taking threes. They're going to push the pace a little bit. They're going to be. I'm trying to think of a good team to compare them to, like in the league. Nothing's coming to mind. But
we don't play a lot of teams that have this sort of medium style. Um, their three forwards are all 6'9" and shorter, so they don't have a guy that plays a true five, but they have some big bodies that they move around inside. We did a lot of SEC teams tend to go towards having a true center, like we do, but I think we list Janai as a forward on our roster. I don't think we list him as a pure center. Colin Castleton and Sheboy might be the only ones that you see listed as pure centers.
well, what about they're averaging over 80 a game, which should tell you something in the rugged Big Ten. I think one of my concerns is Big Ten basketball just tends to be like the SEC has been kind of a physical war this year a little more, but man, the Big Ten games are just like battles.
Number 17 in the country, Iowa, in scoring offense. I was trying to look up some stats over here. The two I've got so far is number 17 in the country in scoring. That's with all the mid-majors there. That's really high for a Big Ten team. And then two, an interesting one, they're number 32nd in fouls per game. That's even higher than us. And we've been getting in all kind of trouble about how many fouls we've been committing per game. We're not even in the top 50. I'll have to find us, but 32 for them. So that's just two interesting ones I saw so far.
Well, let's talk about their 3-point shooting.
Yeah.
Because as a team, they're hitting 34%, which is crazy. And their top five guys in terms of minutes are all above 32%, which means about one of every three of their 3-pointers is going in. So it's really going to be our 3-point defense, a strength on a strength there.
Yeah. And defense overall, right? Like when Auburn's been at their best this year, it's been rugged half court defense, make the other team work for it. And so in some ways, I really like that matchup because I do continue to feel that our offense is just quietly so much better than it was a month or two ago. And it's been really frustrating that we've let leads get away or we've come up short in all these games when we are shooting better. We did shoot the best from the 3-point line in the SEC for the last half of the conference season. Like we are shooting better. And I think if we can defend and keep this game in the 60s and 70s against Iowa, can we play to our strength? Can we control the tempo? Can we limit Murray a little bit? Can we make it hard on like we did Brandon Miller both times we played? If we can do some of those things, I think we've got a shot.
We're number 6th in the country in 3-point defense, which is super impressive. We talked about that I think a couple podcasts back, so nothing's changed too much there. The only crazy part is that number 1 is Tennessee. Number 2 is Houston that we have to play second game if we make it. Number 3 is Alabama.
So the SEC stinks at shooting threes is what that means.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, that's to Matt's point a little bit. We had nowhere to go but up.
Sure.
I mean, I think we were out shooting the Mississippi schools in terms of our 3-point production, but that was about it. And so that was some of that luck metric where eventually the shots just had to start falling. I mean, you can't miss them all forever if you're practicing.
But I don't know if I thought we would have the best percentage in the league for 4 straight weeks.
No, that's true.
Period, you know what I mean?
If you guys, so here's this little mind opportunity here, trying to think of, anything can happen in March. And a lot of these narratives of teams end up getting written after the fact that, yeah, of course it was going to end up like that or whatever. If we're trying to be optimistic and excited, this team, how did they do it? How do they pull this off? What's the narrative? If we can make it to the Elite Eight, what's the narrative? Yeah, I know, crazy, but hey, crazy things happen in March Madness. I'm trying to be optimistic. If something like that happened, what would it be that they're writing the narrative about? What changed? What was embraced? Like, what do you see in your mind's eye? If I say I'm from the future, they made the Elite Eight, you're going to go, this probably happened.
Ben, you want to take that, or I've got a couple ideas.
Yeah, I know. I'll start because I've been saying it for the last couple of weeks. The great thing about college basketball is nothing matters but when you get hot. And the only good thing we can say about this Auburn team, they haven't really gotten hot yet. They have played in a bunch of close games against a bunch of pretty good teams to end this year, and they haven't quite been able to put it together. Bruce is going to have a little bit of extra time. We're going to be going against some opponents that are not as familiar with our style, and even more importantly, I think, are not as familiar with our bench. You can bet everybody in the state of Iowa has heard of Janai Broome. Anybody that's a basketball fan has probably heard of Wendell Green Jr., this little rocket shot of a guard. But up and down the roster, they may not be as familiar with Alan Flanagan. They may not have any idea who Lior Berman, the Hebrew Hammer, is. We've got some guys that can make some surprising plays, and the question will just be, can this team figure out how to finish? And the good news is the moral victories are over. Only victories matter from here on out.
I think it could be either changing the narrative on the close games, and we're due. That's kind of a baseball term. Like sometimes you're just due. You've had rotten luck. You've had missed calls at the end. You've had bad play calls. You've had poor execution. You've had guys hit tough shots on you late. Maybe some of that flips. I think the other piece to that could be like, is this where the veterans help? Like, is this where being in it and getting 2 games last year for almost all these guys, is that where it pays off a little bit? And ultimately, can they keep scoring more and defend at the level we know they can? I think we have the pieces. I really do. And that's what has been so frustrating, Jackson's word this year, because I think we know the limitations of this roster, but like, man, we've been so close. We ended up 1 game behind Tennessee. Like, it's crazy in the SEC standing. Like, we were in position the last week of the year to have the double bye. Like, we're not that far off from being a good team. And
2/3 of the year we played winning basketball.
Yeah. And there have been times where we just haven't strung it together. And it seems crazy that, like Jackson said, that we could get to the second weekend based on what we've seen so far. I just wonder, this is a good Bruce situation. The only other thing I would mention, I think Bruce will have him ready. He's really good in these spots. I think that's why we've hung in all these games. Here's something to think about. Our road record's not great, but doesn't it, if you go back and look at it this year, haven't we played better on the road than we have in past years? Like, in terms of the quality of opponents, I feel like we have not been bothered being away from Neville Arena quite as much this year.
I thought I saw a stat or sent something to you guys that we hadn't won away from Neville Arena since like late January. Now, we played some good close games.
What were those losses?
Tennessee and Alabama.
Kentucky, Tennessee.
Alabama. Still, I'm just saying, we still didn't pull them off.
We haven't won them.
Vanderbilt, Texas A&M.
We haven't won them. I'm just saying, in past years, it felt like the team was so different, Neville, in a way. I don't feel like
that 2019-2020 team, you like, it was night and day. Right? Like, so much we were just like, I want to shut my eyes when we're playing away. It's just so bad, but yeah.
And
it feels like we're comfortable.
Even watching them in Bridgestone last week, like, yeah, we played really bad. And we almost beat an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament last Thursday, and we were down 15, and we didn't play well, and he got killed on the glass. I kept looking at my buddy Bobby, who's with him, like, how are we even, like, about to potentially win this game? Like, it's insane. So I don't think it's wild. I don't think this team's going to, especially going to Birmingham now, like, I am pretty confident they're going to put a good foot forward, but obviously Iowa's a good team. And Houston's a really good team. So we'll just have to see. They'll have to prove it to change the narrative, like Jackson said. Ultimately, we've had opportunities to kick the door down and win in Tuscaloosa and win in Knoxville and win in Rupp and we haven't done it. So
let's talk a little bit about what you were just talking about, which is that in those games, we played pretty badly and still had a chance to win. Against Arkansas, we played pretty badly and still had a chance to win. And it wasn't any of the things that you would expect. We weren't shooting ourselves out of the game. We weren't playing crazy out of control, but it was all of the little things that this team normally does well and normally puts together in a really strong way. The rebounding, the positioning, the not giving easy cuts. Bruce's play calls were all fantastic. We called the same backdoor cut play from that 3 position again and again and again, and we were able to get the ball there again and again and again. And so I think when you look back at a game like the Missouri game, we didn't do anything spectacular in that Missouri game that we won by nearly 20 points that we hadn't done all year. We just did all of the little things that we're capable of, the good rebounding, the good spacing, the hard defending, exactly to the level that we are capable of. So it's a matter of not beating ourselves as much as it is needing to find an extra gear.
And to me, it's turnover. It's the way I've thought about it in my head is like, we have such a low margin for error. You just can't give away easy points. Like on defense, we can't turn the ball over 15 times and let the other team get out in transition and get easy buckets where we can't set our defense. We can't give up line drive layups to the basket like we did against Arkansas time and time again. We were playing a weird defense. I still don't know exactly what we were doing, but
Too much zone.
it kind of was a zone, but it was also in person. It was really weird. I had never seen anything like it from an Auburn team, to be honest. We had a very interesting approach to that from my eyes, but we have to make it. We can't give them easy stuff. We've got to make it hard on them and make the game more of a rock fight and settle into that kind of game. I think maybe part of the problem as we've shot better is maybe we haven't leaned into that identity a little bit. I know it's not sexy. I know it's not super fun, but holding teams to low shooting percentages and in the 60s is a good recipe for this team. We've talked about 70 all year. 70 has become less important because we're not quite holding teams down as much.
If I'm doing this thought experiment, like I was talking about in my head, we're going into the Elite Eight game and the CBS announcers or whoever are saying like, oh man, this team has really turned it on and pulled some upsets. How did we get here? They're going to come in. They're going to say, well, this was a veteran team and man, they've been great on defense all year, but they have absolutely locked in on defense. These other teams have been smothered. They haven't let an opponent above 60 points in this entire March Madness. And look at this. Their 3-point pursuing all year has been bad. It's been terrible. But in the last 5 to 6 games before the tournament started, they started hitting a couple things. These vet guys start hitting their open looks. And in this tournament, with that locked in defense, they started hitting their open looks. And look, they're shooting above 33% now from 3, which is huge for this team. And look at Jalen Williams. They needed somebody to step up. They needed a star. And Jalen Williams is a man possessed right now. He finally turned that corner. He kind of fought the ball away. And for some reason now in this NCAA tournament, he is averaging 18 points a game right now, hitting a couple threes. That's what it's going to take in my head. And that's what it will sound like if we pull it off.
Could it be Hamburglar or Katie Johnson, which for the first time all year, it was both ends. People are going to look at the scoring 20 plus points. That's not what we needed when we were down 15. He was immediately involved in multiple turnovers and made great passes out in transition and keyed things. He made things happen and they were good things. And we haven't said that enough this year. And I think for this team to get to something like an Elite Eight, it's going to take a crazy storyline or two, kind of like your hit. I think that's a really good way to frame it, Jackson. That's good.
I think KD is going to be a tough one to I can't imagine building around his franticness, but I can imagine some other players. I can imagine Jalen turning the corner the way Chuma Okeke did and becoming a big Chum like that. He's shown it at times. I could see Alan Flanagan turning that corner, starting to hit some threes, and then Bruce being like, we are riding Alan Flanagan. We just didn't know he had that in him right now. Or third, I could see Joe Knight Broom coming out and scoring 20 plus points a game. But I think we're going to need Joe Knight Broom to do that on top of a Jalen Williams or an Alan Flanagan. But there's always, I think that's the third in line in my head.
Let me talk.
I can just go off. Yeah.
Let me talk a little bit about some of the problems that Janai has had lately, since it's become clear to everybody that he is a star in this league. Second team All SEC. It's just a fantastic offensive presence. If he has a weakness right now, it's his passing. We've seen him get the ball at the top of the key a lot, and those backdoor cuts have been there. I've seen more guys cutting to the basket with the ball in Janai's hands, and his passing is not strong, and his court vision is not as strong as I would hope it could be. And so we have this issue a lot of times as the game progresses where they're going to start sending 2 guys at him because they're not afraid of Janai passing it to an open guy on the backside. They know that we cannot, from deep in the paint, get the ball around to the backside of the key. So Janai sees a lot of double defenders when we are struggling offensively. So that's why I think it's a lot more likely that you see a guy like Jalen Williams or Alan Flanagan step up that can soften that defense by hitting their mid-range jumpers. But one of the things that I would like to take credit for is ever since Flanagan has entered the starting lineup, we've all been talking about where our points going to come from on the bench. Mm-hmm. Well, ladies and gentlemen, they've come from the man that I wanted benched permanently, KD Johnson. So I need the mea culpa here that he has finally evolved as our scoring threat when the starters are out of the game. And it's been pivotal.
I sure hope that's consistent. I would love for that to be. I'd love for the narrative to be KD turned it around and goes nuts. I just don't see it right now. But
and again, I think for a player like KD, who again I just can't believe was preseason All SEC this year, we look at his offense, and I just think there was something. The 2 things he was incredible at last year were finding extra possessions by being crazy and forcing turnovers and creating havoc, and mostly it was good last year. We knew there was give and take, but it was mostly good. And then he was great in late game situations. And I know we're going to say, well, that hasn't been there this year. Well, he's closed a bunch of games. And I was at Vanderbilt when he hit a cold-blooded 3 to tie the game with 10 seconds to go. And he has started the last few weeks. He's just been playing a lot better. It's never going to be beautiful and consistent, but is he a threat? He wasn't a threat, guys, for weeks. I mean, he's a threat now, at least, and he has to be feeling much better about himself and how he's playing. And maybe, if for nothing else, the locker room, the coaches, he himself, going after that Arkansas game, is like, okay, like, that's big for this team. If he could just be a double-digit scorer off the bench that's not shooting 16 times, which he hasn't been all year, to be fair. He has not been.
He's been so disciplined with his shot selection. But to go back and talk about your defense, one of the great takeaways for me from the Arkansas game, with how much we got boomed at the beginning of that game, I was really doubting the scout. But as the game went on, we saw more and more of our guys stepping into passing lanes. And that is 100% knowing the scout, knowing what they're trying to run, and knowing where the ball is going to go. We saw Chris Moore do it. We saw Alan Flanagan do it. We saw KD Johnson do it again and again and again late in that game when we needed stops and when we needed to force turnovers. And so you want to talk about that veteran storyline. That's going to be it. It's how much do these guys commit to the film study, commit to understanding their roles, understanding their assignments, and then can go out there and execute it, can recognize what they're seeing on the floor and then make a play around it.
And we all agree that those have been good all year for the most part. And I think the kids have done a really good job of like doing that. Like, and my only complaint, you're right. I think we were playing a weird mesh thing and playing those passing lanes. From my angle and my vantage point, it just felt like we were giving 6'7" NBA player Anthony Black like straight line drives down the side of the paint to his right hand. And that just kept killing us, and none of our guys could block it. Our guards obviously aren't quick enough to recover and defend that. So that was my only complaint. But you're right, looking back and thinking back, like we did force some turnovers and we were a little active. I think we were trying to keep the ball out of the middle. We were trying to give them the wing and try to take away some middle stuff. Yeah.
Iowa, number 29 in the country in turnover margin. So they're pretty good at keeping the ball themselves, turning people over. Houston, number 6 in the country at turnover margin, and number 1, which you think, okay, that's not great. We want to turn them over. You know, we've had this part of our defense at times. Missouri, number 1 at turnover margin, and we boomed them. So, hey, anything can happen there, but those are some interesting stats.
Well, but let's talk a little bit about their overall stats in terms of their defense. They don't have a guy that averages 2 steals a game on their entire roster. They have, let me see here.
I'm curious if you guys, I mean, we're not Iowa experts. If you guys know of any matchup issues, you know, I talk about, I didn't want to play some 7-footer guys at Purdue. I don't know if Iowa's got tall guards, if they, you know, I don't know if we can only talk as much as we know about, but
they got some tall guards. Tony Perkins is 6'4", and then Connor McCaffrey is 6'6". So what's going to be difficult about that is it's going to block up some of our passing. You know, if they try to run that style that we saw a lot of teams run where they send 2 guys at Wendell and trap early, we're going to need guys that are coming back to the basket. We're going to need cutters trying to find those lanes. And we're going to need a lot of solid early screen action. But no, they don't have they don't have a Liam Robbins. They don't have a big 7-foot guy. Janai is going to be one of, if not the biggest guys on the floor most of the time he's out there. And so will Dylan Cardwell, who quietly had a great game against Arkansas with 7 points.
You know who's last in the Big Ten in scoring defense by a very wide margin?
Who?
Iowa.
Please be Iowa.
Wow. Yes. All right. Good for us.
So that's kind of what I meant. I didn't want to say that uneducatedly, but historically, Iowa is a more offensive focused, push the tempo, hit threes, kind of higher scoring game. And this year is no different. You know, I mean, 13th place in the Big Ten is Minnesota, who is terrible. They were like 2 wins in the league. They gave up 71 a game. Iowa 74.5 per game all year, counting non-conference. So Auburn better get in the 70s in this game.
And let's talk too. The other thing that's going to be a big concern for us that we've pined for, because we've seen it from other teams, is these guys that can hit transition threes. Auburn doesn't really have a guy. KD has sort of become that guy for us over the last couple of weeks, where it seems like if he gets the ball in a spot with not a lot of people around him, he gets the look that he wants. He's going to pull up and he's going to hit it. Iowa has guys that can do that across the floor. So they don't average a ton of steals, but they tend to frustrate you defensively and maybe force some bad passes or otherwise force some turnovers. So that's going to be the key for us, is keeping them out of their transition 3 game, because a couple of bad turnovers in transition threes, suddenly, you know, a 1 or 2 point game is now a 7 or 8 point game in the span of just a couple of possessions.
Well, let's wind this thing out a bit more and talk about some of these other SEC teams in NCAA. You mentioned that Juni Broom got second team All SEC. Congratulations, super cool, well deserved. I think he needs to be on some more lists for great transfers this year. I mean, if there's 5 better players in the transfer portal, that's crazy to me because what we got out of Juni Broom was amazing this year. Wendell Green, also second team All SEC. I know there's a lot of Wendell haters out there and people that are upset with how he played. I think we put a little too much pressure on him, but he got second team All SEC as a point guard. So just, showing you out there the media respect for him at point guard. And then we got to talk about who won the league, who won the SEC tournament. Bama won both. We have to say it at least. They won both. It sucks. I hate it. We don't have to get in the whole background of some of their players and things that happened this year and how messed up this entire year has been. But they make the tournament as a 1 seed. What'd you say? 8 other SEC teams make it? I saw Mississippi State was one of the last 4 to make it in. We talked about that.
7 plus us, 8 total. My last Iowa thing, I was still looking up stats. Last in the Big Ten in scoring defense. Last in the Big Ten in field goal percentage defense. Last in the Big Ten in 3-point percentage defense. So it's one of you can look at it like a great matchup for us. Where it's like, yeah, we can defend them and hold them way below 80, which was first in the Big Ten in scoring. So really good on offense. But can we take advantage of a statistically weaker defense? It's been trending better, but I'm sure y'all are like me. Like we're gonna need to see Auburn score 80 in a tournament game, where it matters to believe it probably. But that's maybe a good omen. We'll see.
And they say guards run the March Madness. You want great guards, and that's how it's always been. That's not our strength. So we'll see if we can prove them wrong. But that's been a big saying the last 10 years is that the guards run March Madness.
Well, let's remember we do have 2 of the top defensive guards in the conference. I would say in Zep Jasper and in Trey Donaldson's defense as a backup point guard. I wouldn't say Wendell's known for his defense, but there have only been a couple of times I've really felt he's been liability this year. Unfortunately, one of those was the Arkansas game. The Tennessee game a little bit too. So you could see that Wendell may be trending down. But my assumption is we're not the only ones that see that. The coaches have seen that in the film room. They're probably going to be getting on him this week to make sure that his defensive effort is there as well as his shooting.
It's just going down the bracket here. I see Bama number 1. I see Missouri as a 7 seed, which is above us. It's just super interesting to see who we beat and who we lose to and how it goes up and down. I see Tennessee as a 4 seed, how the mighty have fallen. They were like a 1 seed, 2 seed situation. They fall in the 4. We can just hope that they have another Rick Barnes March. Their whole season could turn around if they make a little run here. But, Rick Barnes is stereotyped as he can't do anything in March.
Can I say something about that real quick? Because I was watching the tournament reveal with a Tennessee fan. Brutal draw. Tennessee's only made the Elite 8 once, and that was Bruce Pearl one time. They have to play a good Louisiana Lafayette team because they fell to that 4 line. Their second round matchup potentially is Duke, who's won 11 games in a row, and they have a lot of talent. And then if they get past all that, potentially the 1 seed in Purdue would block them from going to the Elite 8. So I really like that difficult draw as somebody who cheers against Tennessee.
I see Kentucky at number 6 against Providence. Going back on the other side, I see us at number 9. It's just interesting to see. Kentucky moved up to a 6. Tennessee fell to a 4. We were below Missouri. We fell all the way to 9th down the stretch there as a seed. We got Texas A&M at the 7 seed. They went all the way to the SEC championship and lost to Bama. They've been kind of hot. They've had a surprising year for them.
Pretty disrespectful to A&M. I know they had a terrible non-conference, but most people thought they would be a 5. Maybe a 6. That's a tough.
That's one where I think if they'd won, they might have done that up. But here, the March Madness breakdown and the seeding is always such a good reminder of the role the analytics play in all this. Part of the reason why Missouri is so high is because of their efficiency numbers. They're not a flashy basketball team in terms of their record or in terms of their schedule, but they have a star in Kobe Brown and they play good, clean basketball.
I see down the line here. Another thing with Texas A&M, I've heard from some different experts that the NCAA committee really wants to make a point with them last year that their out-of-conference schedule was not good enough and they needed to step it up. They didn't step it up. And here they are again moving back in seeds because of that. They couldn't deny them this year, but they could still punish them for it. I think I'm with the NCAA committee. I know a lot of fans and especially talking heads on ESPN and stuff really love to point down the last couple games and get all upset about things, but the whole season matters. And I think that's what the committee tries to say is like, we can't play around and pretend like the first 50% of the season doesn't matter.
You got to give them credit, man, because like they went 15-3 in the league and they were bad in the non-conference. So Buzz Williams, I've always thought is a great coach. He's done a great job, but you're right. The whole season matters and the schedule you play matters. And I know our fan base is a little new to all this. This is a great, as frustrating of a season as this is, be very grateful that we have coaches on this staff that are smart enough to put together a schedule that was doable for this team to make the tournament. Because there's a lot. You go listen to our interview with Coach Burgomaster. There's a lot that goes into that, and it is very intentional to play these teams. I know they're not always super fun, but this year we absolutely needed that. If we had had a different SEC teams non-conference schedule, we would have either been not in or really, really, really close on the bubble.
Well, and just let's remember, too, that there's a very strange Colorado team out west that beat that Texas A&M team and hung 103 points on them in the Myrtle Beach Invitational, and then also went to Knoxville and beat Tennessee on Rocky Top.
It was in Nashville, and I got to watch it. It was a great
that was
game.
Nashville, okay.
It was a great game to watch.
Next on the list, number 8, Arkansas. That'll be an interesting one to watch. If you don't pay super far attention, you might not know this, but Arkansas has had 2 or 3 years in a row now where they've had some up and down early SEC, losing some games. People going, what is going wrong with Rick Musselman? And then they go to the Elite 8. I think they went to the Elite 8 2 years in a row now, out of nowhere, kind of, or from a higher seed. And this year's another classic example where they lost a bunch of SEC games early, and they've gotten a little hot lately with Nick Smith on there. Just watch. Please, be crossing your fingers. They need to lose early, because if they go Elite 8 again or even Sweet 16, Musselman's going to recruit off that again. That's how he got all the recruits he got now, was getting hot in March. And as much as Rick Barnes' stereotype is the opposite, Musselman's stereotype, if he can pull this off, is going to be Mr. March.
They're not that hot. They went 8-10, and they almost lost to us with all their NBA players.
I got good news for you, Jackson. Guess who's their second matchup if they manage to get past Illinois?
Let me guess. Kansas.
Damn,
I'm good.
one of the best teams in America, defending national champions. Kansas has been cooling off, but in my mind, that's only going to make them piping mad coming into the dance.
Could be.
I see they're playing Illinois also. For some reason, I got on a weird Illinois kick the other day and looked up their Wikipedia. In my head, Illinois was always a great basketball program because they got really they were really good in the mid 2000s, and they went to a national championship in 2005. And I guess when you're in middle school or whatever, that's when you really start paying attention to things, ingrain in your head what a great
Jackson,
team is. They haven't been great at anything.
That team went 37-0 and lost the only game that matters to North Carolina in the championship.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
That's part of why that stuck so much in your brain, because I think they might have lost one more. I think they might have lost their final regular season game. But either way, that team nearly won 40 games of basketball in college, and that's the reason why it's so etched into your mind.
Everybody our age or close to our age has super fond memories of that Illinois team. I find it interesting. I have the same thing. Darren Williams, Luther Head, a bunch of guys who played in the NBA. That was a fun team. I remember that championship game with Carolina. You're right, but they had a lot of.
I looked up their Wikipedia and was shocked that they hadn't done anything since then or before then. And then also, I remember vividly when they retired their mascot, they had a Native American mascot that they needed to get rid of, the Illini. And he did his final dance on the thing. And I was ready to look at it and be that's when they started sucking. But then I realized they had sucked way, most of the time before that. But that's who Arkansas is playing. And the last SEC team to make it made it into this stupid bullcrap play-in games that I hate. Can you imagine if you make the NCAA tournament, but you made the play-in NCAA tournament? That's such bullcrap. It's number 11 seed Mississippi State against number 11 seed Pitt. That just, can you even really count that you made it in? It's like kissing your sister situation. It shouldn't happen. It's just, they want more games for more commercials and more money to be made. And here we are. They're going to do 10 more of these, and they're just going to keep expanding.
Yeah, they
Well, you got to remember one of the other things that the tournament loves is narrative.
Money. They love money.
They love money, yes, but what the play-in games do is they give teams a chance to win a game that might not ordinarily win, and maybe pick up a little bit of momentum and maybe make things interesting. Because I believe there's 11 seeds that do a play-in, and then there's a 15, or is it a 16 seed?
16.
2 11s and 2 16s.
Yeah, so you put two of them smack in the middle, and then you put two of them obviously at the tail end. Maybe give them a little chance to get some momentum before they go up against the almighty number one overall seed.
Well, they wouldn't be in. I think that's the thing some people miss about the final or the first four. The teams that wouldn't be in this field are playing in those 11 seed matchups. So if you're Mississippi State, you obviously love the first four now because you get to get in, and it does count. I don't like it. I hate it. If Auburn though was in the last four in, you're dang sure I'd be glad they have 68, not 64. The other thing I would say, there's a big push to go to 96 teams. Don't do it. It's ridiculous. If you should have to go close to 500 in your league to have a chance to get in. It's not that hard. I don't like it.
It's already kind of ridiculous as is. We love it, but it's ridiculous already how large it is, and that's why we call it March Madness and all that. Anything larger than this, then we might as well not play the regular season anymore. We might just roll that dice out every time.
And it doesn't help to sneak more mid majors in. It really doesn't. We don't need anybody from the West Coast Conference. I mean, look at the way the West Coast Conference structures their conference tournament. Gonzaga plays one game or two games a year in their conference tournament. Do we really need Grand Valley State University in there?
If they're so desperate to have more teams in March Madness or to embrace more ways to like promote more college basketball teams, figure out a way to promote these conference tournaments a little better, because we enjoy it when we get into it, man. That the year that we went on a run to win this SEC tournament, how fun was that? In Nashville with all the different fan bases and everything, it's still growing a bit there. I feel like there's still some untapped potential, and like we're gathering all SEC fan bases in one place for 3 or 4 days. I don't know how else to, like, if you move it back a little further, give it a little more gap, or I don't know what the strategy would be, but I think that there's an untapped market there. And if you're talking about 96, you might as well start, like, you might as well just push it back because they're already doing tournaments with tons of teams before this. You don't need to push back another week or two. The last stuff I want to talk about tournament wise was just going through and seeing what other teams we played. I know we talked about we talked through all the SEC teams we played, but if we're looking down the bracket here, nothing on the first side.
West Virginia's got a chance to play Alabama.
Yep.
In that,
West Virginia
second
here?
round.
Oh, you're right. There's West Virginia. So they play Maryland. They could play Alabama. Trying to find any other ones we have in here.
Memphis will be likely facing number one overall seed Purdue if they can survive a matchup against a hot FAU team in that first round. Florida Atlantic has been a popular dark horse team to maybe pull some stuff off. They have the disadvantage of being drawn opposite Purdue, one of like the most fundamentally sound teams in the tournament. But FAU's been pretty hot all year.
It's much harder for me to see I see Northwestern's over here. We played that epically low scoring battle with them. They play Boise State before they have to play probably the number 2 seeded UCLA. I don't know. I guess how many other teams do we have in here? I know we
USC's got a nice blue blood matchup with Michigan State as a 7 seed. I was kind of hoping that was going to be our matchup because I think they're playing in Albany. So Jackson and I might have made a little road trip. So USC's in there. Their second round matchup will likely be against Marquette. I believe Marquette won the Big East. Is that right? If not, they made the tournament final.
Yeah.
Colgate plays Texas, the number 2 seed. That's a classic Colgate game right there. 15 seed Colgate. That's gonna be. I don't know what time is it. 7:25 on Thursday. I might have to go down to the Colgate bar after our game's over.
And hey, that's going to be a popular upset pick. Texas is really hot right now, so it's going to be hard to get a good piece of Texas.
It feels about every year there's a 215, right?
Yeah.
There's another classic one. What's the classic seeds that
512?
512. That's always an upset. That one's like, you might as well lock that one in. 512 is definitely happened. I feel like almost every year recently we've seen a 215. We saw that dunk team from Gulf Coast. Florida Gulf Coast was a 15 seed, I believe. They made the Sweet 16. That was a fun one. It'll be curious to see if we have another St. Peter's in the house.
Well, and you're right to mention the 12s. This year, all 4 12s are the top 4 automatic qualifying mid-majors, and they are all good. Oral Roberts, Charleston, shout out Marlene's old gig, and Zep Jasper's old place.
Yep.
And Drake and VCU. So, like, they're all capable. Those are going to be awesome. They always are awesome matchups, unless you're Auburn and you're a 5 seed, and then it's no fun at all.
Didn't Oral Roberts went on a tear one year not too long ago, right? They played Duke. That'll be a big I think a lot of people will be tuning in to see if they can take down the bad guys, the villains in Duke there.
And you have to think, if Oral Roberts can get past Duke, the way they've been shooting the basketball, teams are going to voters are going to like them against Tennessee. they're going to like them against Purdue, because the only way that you're going to beat Purdue is to hit shots from the outside. And that's something Oral Roberts has done in spades down the stretch. So I think they're going to be a lot of people's popular Cinderella team for a Sweet 16 run.
I'm hoping for an Oral Roberts Louisiana matchup personally. I wouldn't mind seeing Tennessee lose and Duke lose. That's me personally. Any other thoughts, guys, on NCAA tournament stuff? I'm just so psyched that we get to do this again. It's kind of like we've trudged through the SEC a bit in frustration on some of these games, but man, like when you finally see your name again in these brackets and remember how many years we went without seeing our names in the brackets, like theoretically for a while there, I think this will be the first year I don't do it. Maybe it'll be a reverse jinx, but every year since Bruce has gotten us in the tournament, I have put my bracket in with Auburn going all the way. As I said, if Auburn's going to pull it off, I'm not going to be the Auburn fan that didn't have them doing it. Hey, in our Final Four run year, I won the bracket in my bracket tournaments because I had Auburn going all the way. I don't think I'm going to do it this year, but hey, man, I hope I reverse jinx it and they pull it off, and I got egg on my face for not doing it.
I mean, look, you got to like our odds for getting to the Sweet 16. It's about as friendly a draw as we could have hoped for. I think we match up pretty well with Houston, particularly with the way that we play.
Maybe.
Yeah, particularly with the way that we play defense, I think we match up pretty well with Houston. And there's never going to be an easy path to the Sweet 16. You're going to play quality teams everywhere you go. You got to bring your best basketball, and you got to hope you're playing your best basketball. The only thing that's going to make me feel slightly better this year than last year was last year's team never faced consequences for bad play until that Miami game. They won a lot of close games. They won a lot of games we probably shouldn't have because we fooled around and leaned on our stars too much. This team doesn't have that luxury. So they've had a lot of close games, and they've had to figure out a lot of different ways to score and a lot of different ways to play defense.
Some housekeeping for the podcast. We'll be doing a post-game show after the NCAA tournament. It might get a little wonky exactly what time it'll come out, but we're going to do one for every game. That's the plan, as long as we keep winning, as long as we keep losing, either way. And then we will plan to do an end of season we'll get a big picture situation after the NCAA tournament's completely over, and we'll talk big picture. We did that last year. I think me and Matt went for like 4 hours. I think I don't know how many people listen to that one, but we had to get our own thoughts out after such an amazing season that ended so badly. I hope Ben enjoyed it. So we'll do a big season wrap. So don't worry about that.
Yeah, that's called the postmortem, which will be fun this year because there's been a lot to be angry about. Maybe fun's the wrong word. I just want to point out, I don't know if we fully, Jackson, you're big on cultural moments. We're all kind of have roots in Alabama. If Auburn wins and Alabama wins on Thursday, I just want to make sure everybody's aware, Birmingham is hosting a doubleheader to get to the Sweet 16 that everybody will have the same ticket to watch Alabama versus whoever and Auburn versus most likely Houston. Can you, that's a cultural moment in the state of Alabama for basketball that you're going to have cheering for your team, and it stinks for Auburn, right? Because Alabama's the 1 seed and we're having to play a 1 seed. But I mean, that's a pretty cool thing to be at. I won't be there probably, but I just want to make sure everybody understands that is a really unique, that'll probably never happen again. That's kind of a cool thing.
You'll have to feel bad. I won't feel too bad for them, but you got to feel a little bad for the Houston fans. They're going to try to get, this is their big season. They're going to try to get tickets to go to Birmingham, and they're going to have to fight Auburn and Alabama fans for those tickets on Saturday if we both make it. So they'll be that won't be great ticket price for them.
And hey, listen, I know we don't talk about other sports, but I just want to remember the last time there were a bunch of Houston fans that rolled into Birmingham to watch them play Auburn. And we were reeling then, just as we might be reeling a little bit now. So let's take care of business against Iowa. Let's make some plays early. Let's feed Janai Broom. Let's have Cancun Jalen back. Can we have Cancun Jalen back? Let's have Cancun Jalen back.
Birmingham Jalen. Cancun Jalen.
I like the other Birmingham Jalen.
There was another great one he had, right? Was it Atlanta or was it somewhere he went outside of Auburn? Somewhere. Let's get out of Neville, neutral
Seattle,
field.
Seattle Jalen.
Seattle Jalen. Out of neutral site Jalen is very good.
Hey, if we can pray that Iowa will play a zone, you'll see Cancun Jalen, but I just don't think we're going to get that lucky.
Any other thoughts? I guess last thing for me is just, I said at the beginning of the podcast, I'll say it again at the end. We're doing the Charles Barkley bracket. I believe it's called Barkley's Final Four or Final Four pick here. Charles Barkley's Final Four bracket, the next round. Win Chuck's Bucks. Pick the perfect men's bracket and win $1 million. Ben has his Charles Barkley face. I've got my Charles Barkley face. Matt is not good at his job. He did not bring his Charles Barkley face, but we're
let's
excited.
make the dream. Let's make the dream come true, boys.
Make sure you put the jungle
Sorry,
dash
Charles,
for your name or
terrible.
some sort of variation of that, and I will keep an eye out for it. We will talk about it on the pod.
Excited to see Charles Barkley on March Madness. Other thing, Jackson, did you watch the show? Did you watch the selection show live?
I did not. No.
Listen, Alabama's the #1 overall seed. First time ever, the #1 seed for Alabama. You know what the sentence they said right after it was? They talked about Brandon Miller and the murder incident.
There we go.
On national
you.
TV. I just want to keep hammering that home that they're talking about it.
Good. I want to hear that narrative continue because it's
It was
I'm about to say that. I'm
awkward.
about to say another F word. It's messed up that this is still happening. That this is like interfering with our fun sport. I hate it. I hate it.
I know. I just want to make sure you knew that because
No, it's good. It's good.
I've never heard that before on the selection show. It was weird.
Yeah, it's not happened before. I don't think in college basketball that we have to talk about this stuff.
Fair point. All right.
I'm just gonna be over here with Charles. Y'all do what you got to do.
All right, we good? Any other thoughts? Are we good?
We're good. War Eagle,
All right,
everybody.
guys. War Eagle.
Let's go dancing.